What if the strongest men you know are the ones silently falling apart when no one's watching? What if every smile you see hides a storm, every joke masks a cry for help? We grew up believing men don't cry, that strength means silence, but what if that lie is destroying them from the inside? Imagine living your whole life pretending to be fine because the world taught you that emotions make you weak. What if vulnerability isn't a weakness, but the truest form of courage? What if being real, being honest about your pain, is the only way to truly heal? Stay with me, because in the next few minutes, we're going to uncover a truth most people are too afraid to talk about. A truth that could save lives, rebuild friendships, and maybe even help men finally breathe again. What if every time a boy cried, the world told him he was wrong for feeling? What if every tear that could have healed him was turned into shame? From childhood, boys are trained to silence their emotions like soldiers on a battlefield. Don't cry, be a man, toughen up. These words sound like advice, but they are the first chains around a boy's heart. They don't teach strength, they teach suppression. They teach him that softness is weakness, that showing pain is embarrassing, that emotions are dangerous, and so he learns to hide. He learns to smile when he's breaking, to laugh when he's lonely, to pretend he doesn't feel when he's drowning inside. This conditioning doesn't fade with age, it hardens. As he grows older, he builds walls around himself, brick by brick, until even he forgets what's inside. He stops crying, not because he's strong, but because he's forgotten how. He stops opening up, not because no one cares, but because he's terrified of being judged. The boy who once wanted comfort becomes the man who says, "I'm fine," even when his world is falling apart. And that's where the tragedy begins. Not in his loneliness, but in his silence. Men aren't emotionless by nature, they're emotionless by training. They were never given the language to express pain. They were taught to replace words with work, tears with anger, and connection with distraction. So their friendships become shallow, built on jokes and hobbies, never on truth or vulnerability. They can talk for hours about cars, games, or sports, but not a minute about heartbreak, fear, or failure. They crave connection, but are terrified of it at the same time, because somewhere deep inside, that little boy still hears the voice that said, "Don't cry." And the most shocking part, the world celebrates this emotional silence. Society calls it masculinity. But what if it's actually emotional starvation? What if all those strong men you see laughing at a bar, succeeding in life, or staying calm in chaos are just silently screaming for someone to ask, "Are you okay?" What if strength was never about holding it in, but having the courage to let it out? Maybe the problem isn't that men don't feel, maybe it's that the world never gave them permission to. What if every man you see laughing with his friends is secretly terrified of being truly known? What if behind that confident smile lives a silent fear, the fear of being judged the moment he shows what's real? Men are not heartless, they're just scared of what happens when their hearts are seen. From a young age, they're told that opening up invites mockery, that showing emotion invites weakness, and that vulnerability is a luxury only women can afford. So they build masks, strong, calm, unbothered, and wear them so well that even they forget what's underneath. But every mask has cracks, and behind those cracks, there's a man who's exhausted from pretending he's fine. The truth is, men fear judgment more than loneliness. They would rather suffer quietly than risk someone seeing their pain and calling it too much. That's why even in their closest friendships, they talk about everything except themselves. They'll share opinions, plans, jokes, but never confessions. They'll laugh together, but not heal together. Because somewhere in their minds, a dangerous belief lives. If I show my weakness, I lose my worth. And that single thought is what keeps millions of men emotionally imprisoned, surrounded by people yet connected to none. This fear doesn't come from nowhere. It's inherited from a world that ridicules vulnerability. A man who cries is soft. A man who admits he's struggling is broken. So they lock it all inside, convincing themselves they're stronger that way. But what happens when silence becomes their only language? It turns friendship into performance, connection into avoidance, and love into distance. They stop showing who they are because they believe no one would stay if they did. And here's the most shocking part. This fear of judgment isn't just destroying friendships, it's destroying lives. So many men collapse under the weight of emotions they never learn to release. They die from silence disguised as strength. What if the real bravery wasn't pretending to be okay, but saying, "I'm not"? What if a man's greatest strength was his ability to be human? Because the truth is, no one ever judged a man for feeling until the world taught him to. What if men were never truly friends, only teammates in disguise? What if the bond most men call friendship is actually just a shared activity, a game, a drink, a laugh with no real emotional bridge underneath. From childhood, boys are taught to connect through doing, not feeling. They play together, work together, compete together, but they rarely talk about what's going on inside. Their friendships are built on moments, not meaning. And when those shared activities fade, so do the friendships. One stops playing football, another changes jobs, and suddenly years of brotherhood vanish like smoke, leaving behind silence that feels heavier than loneliness. Men's friendships often exist within invisible boundaries. They can joke, they can tease, but they can't confess. They can celebrate victories together, but never admit defeat. The friendship survives as long as no one crosses the line of vulnerability. It's a quiet contract. I'll be there for the fun, not for the feelings. That's why so many men end up surrounded by people, yet starving for connection. They have company, not closeness. They share laughter, not life, because no one ever taught them that friendship isn't just about time spent. It's about truth shared. Imagine two friends who've known each other for a decade, yet one of them is battling depression and the other has no idea, not because he doesn't care, but because the rules of their friendship never allowed that kind of honesty. That's how men lose each other, not through betrayal, but through emotional silence. They think loyalty means showing up, but real loyalty means showing yourself, and most men were never given the tools to do that. The most shocking part is that these transactional friendships feel normal to them. They believe this shallow connection is all friendship is supposed to be. But beneath that illusion, there's a quiet ache, a longing to be seen, understood, and accepted without judgment. What if men stopped bonding over distractions and started bonding over truth? What if they talked not just about their goals, but their grief? Maybe then friendship wouldn't fade with time. Maybe then men would finally realize that real strength isn't built in silence, it's built in connection. What if the reason men don't open up isn't because they don't want to, but because there's nowhere safe for them to do it? What if every time a man tried to be honest about his pain, the world either mocked him, ignored him, or called him weak? Men aren't silent because they lack emotion. They're silent because they've learned that honesty comes with punishment. From an early age, they're taught that feelings are dangerous territory and there's no safe ground to stand on. Schools don't teach emotional intelligence, families don't discuss mental health, and society doesn't give men a place where they can break without being broken further. So they build their own prisons, walls of humor, sarcasm, and indifference, and live inside them, pretending those walls protect them when in truth, they're suffocating behind them. Think about how rare it is to see a man cry without instantly feeling the need to explain it away. He's tired, he's stressed, he's just had a rough week. We rush to justify his emotions because the world never gave him permission to have them. And when he looks for a space to talk, to be real, he finds none. His friends don't go deep, his workplace demands toughness, his family expects strength. Even in relationships, men often feel like they must be the rock, never the one crumbling, so he learns to wear masks. And the world applauds him for how well he wears them, but underneath that mask is a man who's screaming quietly, longing for a space where he can be human, not a provider, not a protector, not a performer, just a person. The shocking truth is that many men would open up if someone truly listened, if someone made them feel safe enough to. But society has built an environment where emotional honesty is treated like rebellion. A man who speaks is seen as fragile. A man who stays silent is seen as strong. What if we've had it backward all along? What if the men who seem the most surrounded are actually the loneliest of all? What if behind every smile, every joke, every busy schedule, there's a silence so deep it echoes at night? The truth is, many men aren't lacking company. They're lacking connection. They have people to hang out with, but no one to open up to. They post pictures, attend parties, lead teams, but when the noise fades, they sit in the dark with thoughts that feel too heavy to share. Society calls them successful, but success has become their disguise, a way to distract the world from the emptiness that lives behind their achievements. This hidden loneliness is one of the most dangerous forms of pain because it looks so normal. No one suspects the man who always shows up, always jokes around, always has it together. He becomes the strong friend, the reliable one, the listener, never the one who's allowed to fall apart. And the more he plays that role, the harder it becomes to admit that he's drowning. So he keeps performing, keeps achieving, keeps smiling, because stopping means facing the truth, that he feels invisible even when everyone sees him. Men often hide behind success because it's the only place they're allowed to feel worthy. The world doesn't ask them how they're doing. It asks what they've done. They measure their value by productivity, not peace. So they chase more, more money, more goals, more distractions, hoping the noise will silence the loneliness. But it never does. It only gets louder. And what's even more heartbreaking is that no one notices until it's too late. The man who seemed fine suddenly breaks and the world asks, why didn't he say something? But he did, just not with words. He said it in his silence, in his exhaustion, in the fake laughter that covered the cracks. What if loneliness doesn't look like being alone, but like being surrounded and unseen? What if the strongest man in the room is also the most broken? Maybe the real question isn't why men don't open up, but why no one ever stops long enough to notice that they need to. Because sometimes the loudest cries for help come from the quietest hearts. True masculinity isn't about holding it in, but having the courage to let it out. Maybe the problem isn't that men don't talk. Maybe it's that the world never learned how to listen. What if silence is killing men faster than anything else? What if behind every quiet, composed face lies a storm no one knows about because he's been trained to never let it show? Men don't lose themselves because they're weak. They lose themselves because they were taught that strength means never speaking. They were told to deal with it, to man up, to carry pain like armor, but that armor over time doesn't protect them. It suffocates them. Every unspoken feeling, every swallowed tear, every fake smile becomes a weight on their chest until breathing feels like pretending. And by the time the world realizes, it's too late, because the cost of silence isn't just loneliness, it's destruction. Men aren't emotionless, they're exhausted from hiding their emotions. The world claps for their composure but never asks what it's costing them. They learn to suppress, to bury, to distract, until their mind becomes a battlefield of unspoken wars. Depression, anxiety, even self-doubt grow stronger in the shadows of silence. They don't ask for help because they were never shown how, so they bottle it up, smile through it, and call it control. But the truth is, it's not control, it's quiet suffering. And the scariest part is that society still praises it. We call it discipline, focus, toughness, when in reality, it's emotional starvation disguised as strength. The silence spreads into every corner of their lives. It kills friendships, weakens marriages, and poisons self-worth. Men stop reaching out, stop feeling, stop believing anyone would understand. They convince themselves that no one cares, but it's not true. The world just stopped listening. Because somewhere along the way, humanity forgot that men are human too. They bleed differently, but they bleed. They break silently, but they break. What if the real strength wasn't in silence, but in honesty? What if the bravest thing a man could do was to say, I'm not okay? What if healing started the moment men realized they don't have to carry it all alone? Maybe then we wouldn't lose so many to quiet battles. Maybe then silence wouldn't be the language of masculinity. It would be the warning sign we finally learned to hear. So after everything we've uncovered, the silence, the fear, the loneliness hidden behind laughter, the truth becomes painfully clear. Men were never born without emotion. They were taught to bury it. They were trained to wear strength like a mask and hide their pain behind pride. But real strength isn't about how long you can hold it in. It's about having the courage to let it out. It's about saying, I need help, and realizing that asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Every man deserves a friend he can break in front of without breaking his dignity. Every man deserves to be heard without being labeled. The world doesn't need more men pretending to be fine. It needs more men brave enough to be real. Because when men start opening up, healing doesn't just begin for them. It begins for everyone around them. So if you're a man listening to this right now, remember this. You don't have to carry the world alone. You deserve peace. You deserve love. And you deserve connection that doesn't fade when life gets hard. Let this be the moment you stop hiding and start healing. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and for daring to understand what most choose to ignore. May you have the courage to be real, the strength to be vulnerable, and the heart to build connections that truly matter. Good luck, not in being perfect, but in being honest. And thank you from the deepest part of my heart for caring enough to listen.